If you think of trauma, what is a traumatic experience?
Something you have a strong emotion about.
Something that is too overwhelming for you to experience and handle. The experience is too challenging to you and your own survival. That's traumatic. Now, when that happens, and everyone has experienced trauma, by the way, every single person. It can change and vary depending on the person, depending on the environments you were in, on your upbringing, and depending on your interpretation. But every single person has experienced things that were too intense to experience. When we hear trauma, we always look at it through the mainstream lens. Violence, abuse, so on and so forth. Is that traumatic? Yes, 100%. But trauma also depends on the person's perception, meaning a child, say, getting yelled at, can be traumatic. Say you're a child, you're at a restaurant, you speak up, and your parents are like, shh, 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 be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Not here. Now, your parents' intentions might actually be good. I mean, they could also be bad, but say they're good, and your parents like, hey, we got to teach our child how to fit into society. If our child doesn't know to, hey, there's an environment here, don't be disruptive, it could lead to bad outcomes. So we're going to teach our child to be quiet. But you as a kid, you might not interpret it that way because you're a child. You might see it as, oh my God, in this moment, me being loud is causing my parents to yell at me and not love me. Now, they might still love you, they're just trying to teach you, but you might interpret it that way. Now, what happens if my parents don't love me? They could abandon me. What if they abandon me? Can I survive on my own?
No.
I die. Friends, my survival. And it can reach this point where it's like, oh, and in those moments, we will suppress and repress. We might suppress different aspects, like the part of you that's loud. Or if there's an experience that's just too much, you might even repress the entire experience. This never happened. And then you keep living your life. And the longer it's down there, the more the resistance compounds. And then later on, this is why you hear the term getting triggered. Different situations might poke at things that you disowned. Say you're that kid in the restaurant who was loud. Hey, come up front. Speak up. You can't, because the same fear of I'm going to die if I'm loud that you experienced when you were a kid gets poked at, and it takes over in your adult body. Now, the way out is to experience what you didn't allow yourself to experience. It's to re-own those aspects and experiences. Now, if you aren't willing to do this, you're going to keep getting triggered, but there are also thoughts or philosophies that say you will also tend to find yourself in similar situations. So, say you experience something traumatic. A common one might be you keep finding yourself in abusive relationships. It's like, why do I keep falling for these types of people? Why is there a pattern here? And there's a thought that says that unconsciously we do this because it's how, you could say, it's a strategy that our body thinks, hey, I didn't allow myself to experience it the first time, I stuffed it down. But maybe to get rid of this, I just need to experience it again. So it's in hopes that if you experience it again and again and again, eventually you'll re-own it. Does that work? No. But it is a strategy, and it's a thought that people have. So that tends to draw people in similar situations. But the way to re-own it is to sink into it, let it come up, and feel it. And realize that perhaps younger you, it was too overwhelming, but not current you. Peter Levine has a great book called Waking the Tiger, where he talks about trauma and studies a lot of people with PTSD and compares it to how animals process things. And the example he gives is, say you're a deer in nature and a bear's coming right at you. Now, I don't know if he said a deer or a bear, but I like it. So there's a little deer and the bear's rushing. And the deer's cornered. Can't run, right? And can't defend itself. Fight or flight. What happens if you can't fight or flight? You freeze. You're like, I can't run, I can't fight back. It's coming at me. I'm going to get ripped to shreds. What do I do? And what happens is you freeze and you'll see animals just play dead, fully frozen, just lying there. Now, why do they do that? Because on one end, Perhaps the bear might say, oh, dead, and move on. I mean, what else are you going to do? Right? It's coming right at you. You're like, oh, just. But in that frozen state, you disconnect as much as you can from feeling in life. You just dissociate completely. That's suppressing and repressing. It's dissociation. It's disconnecting. This is also why you hear a lot of people who are victims, say, of abuse and violence, seeing themselves in the third person. It's, I'm just going to go to my happy place. I'm not here. This is not me, because this is too much to handle. Now, on a purely, say, animal level, strategy-wise, he does say that this helps because if you were to get, say, ripped to shreds, it'll hurt a lot less because you're just disconnected. However, let's just say the bear leaves. So that's the strategy. Freeze, and the bear is like, walks off. This is the important part. What you'll see in animals is the deer will then get up and shake it off and then just go on with its day. Discharges all of that pent-up energy. What we do as humans is we experience similar things where we might not lie down and play dead, but we'll have that trauma and we'll stuff things down. But then unlike the deer, we never shake it off. And we just get up and go about our day like, I'm fine. Then something else happens. I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And here you are as an adult. Being authentic. No. So the problem isn't how we cope with trauma. It's actually good that we can cope with trauma. People also ask me this with children. It's like, are you going to shelter them from trauma? And what I always say is, I'm going to protect them at all cost, but I'm not going to shelter them. I'm not going to create this safe little bubble space for them to grow up in, because what happens? You're then delaying the inevitable. They're going to have to face life eventually. It's much healthier, and this is my personal view, for me to protect them and help them face life. And it's not about avoiding situations that become too overwhelming. It's about teaching them how to process it after the fact. The problem isn't how we cope with trauma. The problem is that after the fact, we never experience what we didn't allow ourselves to first experience, and then it runs us. We have to be like the deer who shakes it off, who lets go of it after. Imagine at a young age, anytime you experience something traumatic, so overwhelming, someone came to you and was like, here's how you let go, time to let go. And you let go your way through life. Then there wouldn't be this big buildup, this big reservoir that you have here today that you have to start chipping away at and processing. Does that make sense, by the way? Yeah. And this is really what runs us. We all have these big reservoirs, and this is also why little situations that might be nothing at a surface poke at us. We've all flipped out over things that made no sense logically. It's because that little thing was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the little drop that made the reservoir overflow. And then what we sometimes do is we try to deal with the little drop, but we never address the reservoir. What are all the reservoirs within you? What are all the experiences, the things you didn't allow yourself to feel? Going back to that split, what are all the aspects of yourself you've been stuffing down and not reowning? That's this type of work. Literally, what I teach is the art of shaking it off, as Taylor Swift would say, just shake it off. It's the art of being that deer and revisiting all those instances where you didn't shake it off and you shake it off now. And here's the thing too. Things that were too overwhelming at one point in time, later on you're different. You couldn't experience it then, it was too overwhelming. But once the threat's gone and you're safe, you can then experience it. But we think we still can't, and we can't, and we can't, and we can't. Right now, as an adult, you can experience those things. That's why I also keep saying face fear's bluff. You are strong enough now. It's also why you'll hear stories of people, including myself, by the way, who might go through really hard times in life. All right, I went through a really hard time in life in 2014, a whole worldwide scandal. And during the time, it was traumatic, but I kept it together. And what was interesting is after it all kind of died down and people moved on and stuff, during the time, friends would come up to me, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah. Then when it died down, that's when things actually started coming up. During it, I felt actually okay because I had to toughen up and stuff it down to survive the event. And soon as things were safe, things would start coming up. Now, interestingly enough, that's when people stop asking, are you okay? So for anyone too, if you know anyone going through a hard time, check in after too. But why does it start coming up? Because that's also the body saying, hey, you didn't have the time and you couldn't handle it then, but now that it's safe, you can handle it now. Same thing here with all of you. There's parts of you trying to shoot up, trying to come up, and you have to honor them and feel them. I'll give you a few tools here to dive a little deeper on the things that run you. The first is what I call following the trail of whys. Simply put, asking yourself why. And this could also link to what I also call files versus folders. So say we take fear in every single situation in life that scares you. There might be, okay, fear of speaking out in public, fear of rejection, fear of asserting a boundary, fear around speaking about something to my partner, fear around work, et cetera, et cetera. There's a million situations that you might be scared of. Now, say you identify a lot of those situations. One approach could be, well, I learned this letting go thing from Julien. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take every single situation and one by one, I'm going to start trying to let go of them. Now that's good. It's better than nothing, but it is not optimal. To make your work more optimal, with all of these situations, I would follow the trail of whys. So say we take, okay, I'm a fear of speaking out in front of a crowd. Well, why is that scary? I might get disapproved of. Why is that scary? Well, if they disapprove of me, I might get rejected. Why is that scary? If I get rejected, I'm not good enough. Or if I get rejected, then I'm alone. So by going deeper, you start identifying different folders. So here it could be the fear of being alone. And with a lot of these surface fears, if you follow the trail of whys, they all lead back to the fear of being alone. So you could think of all these different situations, all the files, in the folder, fear of being alone. So what that means is if you actually start processing and letting go of the fear of being alone, you simultaneously process all the files within that folder. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you don't have to go individually. So this following the trail of whys, extremely powerful. And the big traps though is challenge yourself to go deeper, meaning don't stay at the surface using the same words or different words saying the same things, right? I'm scared of rejection. Why? Because then I'll get rejected. Why? Because then people will reject me. Why? Well, then I won't be accepted. Why? Well, then I'll be ostracized. Yeah, well, that's the same thing. It's you say, no, go deeper, deeper, deeper. And it's possible you hit a layer where you can't go deeper. And that's fine, just work with that for now. And perhaps once you process that, you'll then hit another layer. Take time. And also take time to introspect. I told this to my clients this morning. I said, schedule into your weekly schedule time to just ponder and introspect. We always schedule in work, right? Doing activities. Okay, from this time to this time for the coming week, I'm working, then I have lunch, then I do this, then I meet this person. It's all these activities. What I would also add on is schedule in time where you mess around and do nothing productive. Schedule that in and allow yourself to mess around. Because what people do is they're working and then they're like half working, but they also want to mess around. They're like, I don't want to be working. I want to relax. And then as soon as they're relaxing, they feel guilty about relaxing. I should be working. It's this back and forth versus having a clear boundary. From this time to this time, I work. From this time to this time, no work. Even if I want to work, not allowed to. You treat it like a meeting. Nothing productive. And you learn how to relax. But then I would also schedule in pondering time. Time where you just sit down, no distractions, you just think. Just ponder. Reflect on you, on your life, on your beliefs, the thoughts that pop in, where your life's going, your past. Just ponder your fears, following the trail of whys, trying to find different folders. And maybe nothing comes up, but at least you give yourself that time just to introspect, to stay open. This will also help a ton when it comes to living your life proactively where you're at the cause versus always in reaction. Because not only do people live in reaction to past trauma, they also live in reaction to notifications. This, what, can't do this, what, this. And then life flies by versus being proactive. You can also audit if you're living in reaction by how many core memories did you form or do you have? There's a movie, Inside Out. It's a Disney movie. As I said, with kids now, I know all the Disney movies. And Inside Out shows like the different emotions in this girl's body, and you view it from the perspective of them being characters. But there's this part of the movie where they're storing all these memories, and there's these things called core memories. It's like memories that will impact them for their life, and they'll remember for their life. It's the ones that really stand out. And what I always say is if you're living your life always in a reaction, kind of going through the motions, it feels like your life is Groundhog's Day, right? Here's another day, here's another day, here's another day. If that's the case, you will form very few core memories. And you can audit the past 2, 3 years, 4 years, how many memories or instances really stand out? Or is it just a big blur? If it's a big blur, not good. That's living in reaction versus being proactive. Also challenging yourself, going for your win, playing to win versus playing not to lose. That's when you start forming those. So you'll know the more core memories you form, the more authentically you are living. But pondering and finding the folders is key. So following the trail of whys is one. The next is reflecting back on the first time. You experience something that, say, triggers you, when your response is disproportionate to reality, when something inside of you is getting poked at, and then asking yourself, well, when's the first time I experienced this? The further back in time you go, the more powerful. Get it? So here it's the deeper you go. Why? Find the folder versus the files. The other one is, here's something that triggers me. Well, how far back in time can you go? When was the first time? Now, it's possible that you do not remember the first time, and that's okay. You could argue that the first time you might have experienced that trauma might have been birth. Do you remember your birth? Any of you remember coming out? I'm here. No. None of you remember that. And that's okay. It's also argued that with some traumatic experiences, we store those memories differently, or we'll kind of break them apart and put like sound here. Like you won't remember them the same as a normal memory. So it's possible you don't remember, but that's okay. Go as far back as you can. And even if nothing comes back, just that act of asking yourself the question opens you up more to different sensations. And both of these approaches, by the way, and the third one that I'll give you, always lead to sensations and release. Meaning when it comes to letting go, the first step is become aware of what you want to let go of. On a macro layer, it means become aware of the things that are running you out of your awareness. This is what allows you to dive deeper into that. Once you're aware of that, it's zooming in on that. It's once I'm aware of the thing, I then bring my awareness to the associated sensations, how this translates in the body on a feeling level. And that's where during the letting go meditations, you focus on sensations. But this allows you to access a lot more. So trail of whys, when was the first time? And the last one is shadow questions, where you must all realize that there are two worlds inside of you. There's a world you're aware of and a world you're not aware of. You could also break it down to simplify it as your conscious and subconscious. The things you disowned, the things that run you, tend to be at the bottom of your subconscious, under layers and layers and layers of resistance. Which is why, if you have a situation where you're like, I want to go this direction towards success, but I keep self-sabotaging. Why? I don't know. It's because something that is out of your awareness is pulling you away from that. And a big challenge when it comes to this work is becoming aware of what you don't know. Another famous self-help saying, there's what you know, there's what you know you don't know, right? Do you know what 239 times 587 is? It'd be funny if you did. You're like, actually, no. You know that you don't know the answer to that, right? So there's what you know you don't know, and there's what you don't know you don't know. That's the gold. And it can be very challenging to bring this up. You can't just try to think about it. This is also why I take my clients through different exercises and processes that are only meant to trigger things up into their awareness, to poke at what's down here. But one exercise is asking yourself shadow questions. You can also think of this hidden world as your shadow self, right? If you're familiar with the work of Carl Jung. A shadow question is a probe, if you will. It's something you can send down into your subconscious, hoping that it shoots up an answer. But shadow questions aren't comfortable, and our default reflex is to deflect. Here's an example of a shadow question. Why are you worthless? Now, what happens when any of you hear this? Why are you all worthless? I'm not. That's the reflex. I'm not. What are you talking about? Now, here's the thing with the shadow question. Don't analyze the validity of the question. You're not worthless. But hearing this question, does perhaps a part of you believe you are? And if so, what's the answer that shoots up? Get it? The same as, why is success not for you? Like, it is. Well, no, play the devil's advocate in a way. Be like, why perhaps wouldn't it be for me? See what comes up. Why are you unlovable? Not saying you are, but what comes up hearing that? And these are questions that you ask yourself. Why am I not good enough? Why do I hate myself? Why do I deserve pain? Because of this. So it's all these questions that you write down the answer. And it allows you to identify the hidden things that run you. Get it? It's going a layer deeper. So these are 3 ways to go a lot deeper. And then the 4th that encompasses all this is doing what I call a letting go meditation. Where if you think about letting go, what people tend to do is they think, oh, it's just breathing into it. Or they'll hear the expression, let go and let God. Okay, I'm triggered. I'm going to let go and let God. Or nothing happens. Or I'm just going to breathe into it. But then you're just processing the little drop at the top. You got to use all these arsenals of introspective tools, exercises to dive deeper and then let go. And on your letting go experience, the reason I say do a letting go meditation, and this is what I personally use myself, by the way, I still use to this day my own letting go meditations. It sounds out there, but it's true. I only listen to the ones that are in my private mentoring, but I listen to those exact ones with my headphones on or earphones, and I'll sit down and do it. And I'll listen to my own voice guiding me through it. Now, 2 reasons. 1, why do I listen to my own voice guiding me through it versus guiding myself through it? Because I don't want to think. You don't want to engage the mind. You want to feel when letting go. And secondly, during the meditation, there's different questions that I ask myself in the meditation that allow me to also go deeper. And that's the thing with letting go. It's about depth. It's about quality, not quantity. People will sometimes ask, like, hey, if I do 20 letting go meditations a day, how long will it take? And I'm like, it could actually make things worse because you're adding surface through it. You're also trying to rush through it. It's about depth, quality, taking your time. The same with trying to rush through the meditation. It can be very helpful to pause your way through the meditation. I pause it. That client I was telling you about earlier who would go to the bathroom during the office hours, do the meditation, he did a 20-minute audio letting go meditation of mine. He paused his way through to the point where it lasted 5 to 6 hours. He has the record of the longest pause your way through meditation. But he got crazy results just from doing that. So think quality, not quantity. And one last thing with this type of work, a question that people tend to ask too is, well, when will I have let go of everything? Now, as we talked about, that's not the goal. You also will never let go of everything, but you will shift your foundation. But more importantly, back to the goal, it's not to let go of everything, it's to enhance your quality of life. And you don't have to let go of everything to do that. And then people ask, well, okay, that's cool, but how long does it take? How will I know? And the answer I give, and a lot of spiritual gurus give, is, oh, when will I know I've let go of everything? When you stop asking the question. Now, I heard this way back in the day. It's not new. And that answer used to always piss me off. I'm like, no, I mean, there's nothing you can really say, but it's not. But from the other side now, I will explain why this is actually the best and most genius and accurate answer. When will I have let go of everything? When you stop asking the question. Let's break it down. What does that mean? If you analyze the question itself, when will I have let go of everything? What's motivating that question? I'm not happy with the right here, right now. I'm not happy with myself right here, right now. When will I let go of everything and make it to the happy version of me, where I can just be? Well, the more you start letting go and reowning, the more you start feeling at home within your body. The happier you start feeling, the more fulfilled you start feeling. And eventually you'll reach a tipping point, and it's a big shift in this whole journey, where you feel actually at home within yourself. You feel good just being you. And there's no longer the need to reach this happy ending finish point. And the concern of when will I make it, that question just stops popping into your head. Right? Like, do any of you have to make yourself not think of a monkey getting its balls ripped off? Yes or no? Do you have to make yourself not think of that? Don't think of the monkey balls. Don't think of the monkey balls. No, it just doesn't pop into your head. I use the most extreme, crazy thing because everyone's like, I'd never think of that. Yeah, like there's no reason to. Until now. Now, to be fair, I actually have been thinking about this recently myself. Let me explain. A friend sent me a clip of, it was the Joe Rogan podcast with a guest, this artist guy. And it was this crazy clip. I'm like, why did you send me this? And the guy's it was an artist, and he flew down, I believe, to Africa. And he's like filming this documentary about this tribe. And he's like, I went on this like monkey baboon hunt with them. And I was like, what? And basically the whole story is like he goes out, and he said it was really weird because chasing the monkeys felt like you're chasing a human to some extent. So he's like, they were running and they unleashed the dogs. And one dog ran up and just bit and ripped the balls off this one chimp. And the chimp kept running, and then they were throwing the spears, and one went through the shoulder, but then the chimp like pulled it out and threw it back at the tribe. And I was like, oh my God. And he's chasing this chimp, and then they're like, yeah, we killed it, and they killed another one. There was a pregnant one with the baby, and all the kids from the tribe cut the stomach open, pulled out the baby, and started eating the brains. And I was like, so that was the podcast. Since then, I have been thinking about balls getting ripped off. Now, you will too, so you share my trauma from this podcast. And that's the fifth magical way. Share your trauma. No, I'm kidding. But back to the original point. You don't have to make yourself not think this, at least prior to this story. The same with that question. You don't have to, the question won't be like, when will I have made it? You're like, shh. It will just stop popping up. Because it only pops up in the mind of someone who isn't happy with who they are. Okay? And the same, funny enough, with rushing this process. Don't be in a rush. What is rushing? What's being in a hurry? The same with life, by the way. It's trying to rush till death. Oh, is this over yet? Oh, why are you trying to go towards death so fast? Relax, slow down, be present. The same here. If you're like, this event, is it over? Oh, what do I have to do later? Oh, and tomorrow. You're rushing towards death. Be present. It'll fly by. You'll be dead soon enough. Embrace it. Milk it. So once more, with some of these tools, it's going deeper. And then another one too is identifying the different themes, meaning I don't do general letting go meditations. I do specific themed meditations. So identify it, like what's running me here? Oh, fear. What's running me here? Anger. What's running me here? Desire. What's running me here? Courage. What's running me here? Grief, apathy. And I have specific meditations for each of these levels that surgically go deep on it and ask certain questions that allow me to access deeper sensations. And doing this type of work has changed my life. And it doesn't take away from action. Action helps tremendously too. Here's another formula that allows you to go deeper here. I teach this to my clients. It goes action, trigger, release, repeat. Action, trigger, release, repeat. Meaning, say there's something that scares you. You take the action. It triggers the fear. You let go of it and you repeat it. Because getting triggered is once more some of these things you disown shooting up closer into your awareness. And the more they shoot up, the more triggered and scared, and the more your survival instinct kicks in. But it's a lot easier to become aware of them up here than down there. So the best time to release is actually the time when you get triggered. But that will also be the time you will not want to release at all. And there are 3 stages to when you get triggered. The bottom level is you get triggered and you don't even realize you're triggered. And you just act on it and it takes over. That's most people alive. Then as you move up, the next level is you get triggered, you realize you're triggered, but you succumb to it. You're like, I'm triggered, I know, but I can't, and you just do it, right? And the way you succumb to it will tend to be through expressing, escaping, or numbing. You probably all experienced this. Maybe one day you're like, I'm just really anxious, I need a drink. Well, you succumbed to the trigger. Instead, in those moments, become aware of when you're triggered, put your foot down on acting on it, and do a letting go meditation instead. And one last story with this. There was a client too who would just smoke a lot and wanted to work on no longer smoking. And what I had him do, because when would he smoke? When things bubble up and he's triggered, right? In intense and subtle levels. So I had him roll up these pieces of paper that said, do a letting go meditation, do a release. And he rolled them up and put them in his pack of cigarettes. So anytime he reached for a cigarette, it's like a reminder, do a meditation instead. And he started releasing, stop smoking. Now, will I say that this will work for everyone? Not necessarily, but it worked for him. When you're the most triggered, the time you least want to do the letting go meditation is the best time for you to do it.